Hello everyone, welcome to the next fireside chat that we have. My name's Daniel Oxley, I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Armadillo Managed Services, and we have a special treat today. We're talking to Adam from Cloudian. Adam, could you introduce yourself first of all, please?
Yep, so thanks Daniel. My name's Adam Dagnall. I am the Senior Director for the SE team here in Europe, which basically means I manage pre-sales for Cloudian in Europe, Middle East and Africa.
Thanks very much. And before we dive in, I've got plenty of questions to ask you, Adam. Let's start off by setting the scene. What is Cloudian?
So yeah, Cloudian is, in essence, we are a scale-out, software-defined S3 compatible object storage platform, in a sentence. So we're designed to look, feel, and behave like AWS, but ultimately, we're an on-prem solution that sits behind your firewall, offers some enhanced security when compared to the public cloud. Typically gives you better performance than what you would get from the public cloud, but ultimately comes in at a reduced price point. So we look, feel, smell like Amazon, but operate, on-prem and cheaper.
Fantastic. And first of all, just for the audience, one thing I always like to make clear, we're not going to talk sales. That was a nice little sales pitch introduction. Technical conversation here to find out a little bit more. So one word, Adam, which I've seen used a lot, is the word immutability. So that gets thrown around quite a bit. Not everyone has heard of this word before. If you've got a programming background, then you'll absolutely be familiar with it. So let's begin with, first of all, to you personally, how do you define immutability? And then why would having an immutable copy of all your data be so important?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So immutability, which is often referred to as worm, write once, read many, is not really a new concept, as you touched on there, Dan. And if you cast your minds back to optical media, DVD, CD, drives, and devices, this is an example of where you would write once when you burn the disk, and then read many times. Back when we were using those, it was really about moving these data sets around, because this was kind of pre-cloud, but it's a good example of what worm is. And over the years, there's been storage platforms and technologies that have been designed to provide an immutable backup target, so that data cannot be tampered with, cannot be altered. So immutable basically means unchangeable. And back at the end of 2018, AWS introduced object lock into the S3 spec. An object lock basically provides immutability at the bucket or object level. So this gave AWS customers the ability to be able to define a retention period, where once data is uploaded into that bucket, once an object has gone into that bucket, it cannot be deleted, it cannot be removed until that retention has expired. And that has found itself into many backup products now that take advantage of this feature. So the likes of Veeam, Commvault, Veritas, pretty much all of them offer something in this space. And the idea is you can create a backup set, you can retain it for 30 days, and that backup is protected. That cannot be manipulated, it cannot be tampered with, it cannot be altered, it cannot be changed. So in the event you are compromised, you suffer some sort of ransomware attack, your data is encrypted or whatever might happen, you have a clean copy that can then be used for restoration, so you can get back to a good operational state.
Reminds me of my days. One of my first jobs was server management, and part of it was putting the tapes in all the servers, and then you take your backups, and then the tapes will get shipped off site. So look, it seemed obvious what you're saying, but it's typically not always in the security roadmap of a business. So what's your take on that, and where does Cloudian come in?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. I think it's more than technology, right? When we're talking about the kind of strategies that need to be put in place. I think, having obviously immutable backups, being able to have a clean copy that you can use for restoration is a good thing to have, but it's certainly only kind of part of the solution, right? For sure. You need to be mindful of, how you're going to actually recover that data, how quickly you're going to be able to recover that data. I mean, if you are in the public cloud, as an example, if you're using AWS for your immutability, and you do suffer an attack, if you are compromised, typically what people do in that event, is they isolate the network. So, if your backups are stuck in the cloud and you isolate the network, you're kind of in a catch-22 situation. And you also need to be mindful of, how quickly you can actually get the data back. How big are the pipes you got? How much bandwidth have you got available? So, if everything gets wiped, you need to have a running order. How are you going to get back operational? What services need to come up first? What are the most critical components? And all of this requires, planning. And I think that's the bit that's very often missing. I know we've got customers that do immutable backups, but how often do they test these procedures? How often do they do a run through? Do they know which people are going to need to be, involved in the event of a scenario such as this? And, I've been doing backups and restores for too long, right? Decades now. And the key takeaway there, the backup is only as good as the restore. If you've got 100% backup ratio, that's great. But if one restore fails and it's that one file that the CEO needs, as a backup admin, your job's probably on the line. So yeah, I think more than technology is my answer to that.
Now, so we've got customers who have we've discussed these things with customers as well. And when I have my discussions with businesses, I'd say one of their biggest concerns is the threat of ransomware. It's the idea, and of course it's been all over the news. Many businesses, especially public sector, have suffered from data encryption and things, and they always seem to be taken by surprise by the attack, and also they never sort of planned for it, or they didn't expect the outcome to be exactly as it was. So what's your view on a data protection strategy? What do you recommend to a business in terms of how best to plan for such an extreme case?
Yeah. I mean, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? And again, I think we provide a small portion of solution with regard to making things immutable that you can get back up and running. But how do you stop the threat? Well, I mean, that is a challenge, right? I mean, even with some of the best procedures and policies in place, the network's porous, right? I mean, it's a given now. You used to go to the security conferences, the network's dead, we understand that stuff's going in and out. I mean, how easy is it, to walk into an office for a meeting with a mobile phone, go up to a screen, take a picture of something you shouldn't necessarily, have access to? It's so easy, right, to get the data out. And if you look at some of these attacks, right, these high profile attacks that we see with, the big organizations, I mean, some of it's really there's a social element, when these phishing attacks happen, the guys that are doing this and girls that are doing this, they do their homework. They know who they're targeting. They know when to target these people, if they're busy, and it's very easy. I mean, I've been in the industry 20 plus years, 25 years nearly. And in the last year or two, I mean, I've almost succumbed to an eBay scam. Very quickly, nearly sent some money to pay for some shipping, which I just at the last minute figured out this is a scam. But it looked legit, right? It looked legit. The website was good, and, getting texts from people claiming to be other people, it's really, really hard. So I think, there is the technology side of it, having good technology, good processes, good training for individuals, and making people aware of, the different attack vectors, the different ways that, you can be compromised, and it's an ongoing thing as well, right? You can't just have, one, because things change, technologies change, and it's always a moving target. So I don't have a good answer for that, I'm afraid, Daniel. They're just pieces.
No, no problem at all. And there is no single answer. I mean, the most common approaches is EDR, endpoint protection, firewalls. And businesses, they spend millions of pounds of money on these solutions, and yet they leave their data sort of in. Of course, they've got shares and security, but they're not having these immutable copies of their data, which they can get access to quickly. And over the years, a lot of businesses had moved their data into the cloud as well. And you can sort of see the logic of it. It's like, well, why do I need on-premise servers, which I've got to look after and I've got to back up, when I could put it into SharePoint and OneDrive, and I can essentially offload that problem to Microsoft or someone else, and they'll look after it. Okay, but it's someone else's data center. And I just wanted to pick up on a point you mentioned earlier about, I mean, that's all well and good when it's great, but when you do need that copy of your data, you've got to phone up, say, Microsoft or your provider. You've got to log a support ticket, and you're in a queue. If there's been an outage, or you're trying to download all of your data quickly, and how fast is your internet connection?
Yeah, and that kind of plays to what we've been doing with the whole sort of on-prem object store, and a lot of our customers, a lot of our install base, there's an appetite to use the public cloud, but a reluctance to do so, and it usually falls into either the performance element, like you say, how quickly can you get the stuff back down the pipe and recover it, or some kind of legal or regulatory compliance type reason why they don't want to put their data in the public cloud. So when we did our object log kind of certification and validation, we got all the different kind of rubber stamps and bangs on that we're hardened, and this isn't just the US standards like EAL and FIPS, it's the local German and Swiss standards as well, because again we have different requirements depending on where you are in the world, even depending where you are in Europe, right? Different countries have different laws. So the idea being, we can offer kind of the most hardened and secure platform for those immutable backups. And actually, when we run in our compliant mode, because we have two modes of operation, one is compatible, which means we support the S3 spec, but there's a backdoor in so that you can actually delete the data. And the reason why we put that in is if you're a service provider and you sell your customer, the customer says, okay, I want 10 years retention, and you put that on your bucket, and then they go walkies after 6 months or so, you're stuck with their data for 10 years. So there is a backdoor in for service providers with the compatible mode, that if you as an organization have the requirement to get the Sarbanes-Oxley, certification for your data in your data center, we can run in this certified mode, which is really, it's hardened, there's no root access, it's completely locked down. So short of you physically going in there with a sledgehammer or a big magnet and actually deleting all the media, the data can't be tampered with.
And of course that's the immutable element of it, which means in the event of a recovery, a ransomware attack or something, in the event of a recovery, I've got a known good copy on premise of my data, and it makes the recovery super simple. And of course, the attacks, they don't actually have to result in encrypted data. If we think back to what we were just talking about with cloud storage, an attack could be a more straightforward denial of service to your cloud storage or takeover of credentials. If someone manages to get into your Azure AD, then they could cut your access off to all of your data. Okay. Which means then it's as good as if the data was encrypted. So if I was a business owner concerned, as I should be, with data protection, and I'm building my security roadmap, if I had that blank sheet of paper, could you make a few suggestions around a data strategy, please, that would be a good pointers to start with?
Yeah, I mean, again, I'd love to say that immutability is the one ticket answer for the solution. It's certainly part of it, and probably a very important part of it. So data protection, encryption, the whole kind of guess risk assessment part of it, as I mentioned before, the testing, the procedures, understanding, who's involved. Access control is another, key area, zero trust, least privilege. And again, S3 kind of lends itself quite well to this without going too deep into the weeds of S3. But IAM, when you use IAM in an S3 environment, you have no privilege, and it has to be kind of explicitly granted. So I think all of these kind of areas need to be considered and need to be factored into the plan. Absolutely.
Thanks, Adam. And as always, the time's always ticking. I'd love to spend longer talking about this topic. That data strategy, to me, it is a big one. It feels like something which can provide huge value to a business, but it's often overlooked because people are thinking, okay, I need my firewalls and my EDR and my DLP, which of course they absolutely do need, but also what you need is a safe and reliable copy of your data. So, Adam, with that, thank you very much for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great to talk to you, and we'll catch up soon.
Off you go.
Thank you. Goodbye.